Mabumba, Garamundaguru Jana Janang. When I stand out and sing out on country, let my spirit stand tall. I want to pay my respect to the Cummergal people. I've taken advice from Chels on how to say that, and my apologies if I got it wrong. And I just want to acknowledge their country, and a beautiful piece of land as well. Also want to acknowledge countrymen in the room, and those of you who like that we've worked with in partnership over the time. NAILSMA is a proud member of ACE, IUCN, and also IUCN in regards to that call out, and thanks Sally for acknowledging that. As the only Indigenous IPO and our role that we play. And I just want to acknowledge my colleague, Erica McCready, and the role that she plays, and also the role that she's moving into in regards to the council and going on to Congress. That role in regards to NAILSMA that we play obviously extends broader into within our title across Northern Australia. And there's many parts of our work, and I just want to acknowledge some of that work that we do across Northern Australia, but also the people, because that's what makes it special in regards to what we need to deliver and how we deliver it and who we speak on behalf of. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Barry Hunter. I've been the CEO for NAILSMA for a year and a half. My people are the Jabbergai speaking people on my father's side and Judable on my mother's side, from up near Cairns and the Atherton Tablelands. I grew up in a little place called Cranda, that's home. In regards to the role that we play at NAILSMA, again, is that sort of advocacy and policy, but it's also some of the work that we do on ground. And there's a whole range of different activities that we do, but being able to maintain that voice and represent that voice of people who are engaged, countrymen who are engaged with works on grounds, is a treasured and important role that NAILSMA has played for a long time, 24 years in existence, and a lot of that has been around that cutting edge of policy and statement and pushing into government and on a whole range of matters, including biodiversity, water, caring for country and managing country, but also sector development in terms of Indigenous ranges and of course Indigenous protected areas, which I do want to talk a little bit about today. NAILSMA's strategy that we're just finalising concentrates on a few key areas, particularly, as I just mentioned there, around the advocacy and strategy, but also being able to get direct investment into the areas and communities that we work with, and the operations. We're starting to see a real maturity in the types of operations and in the land and sea sector and ranger groups, and we're starting to see some adequate level of investment, and I wouldn't say sufficient, but there is some adequate level of investment to start moving in a positive manner in regards to addressing some of the key issues that we see and we are going to experience and hear about over the next couple of days. I do want to commend the Australian government in terms of the steps that they've taken in regards to not just the nature positive laws and the suite of legislation that was put up in the last government, but also the positive words that we just heard there from Sally in regards to where we're going. But also want to take a note of caution in regards to that level of investment, and but also the outcomes in regards to what the government are trying to achieve. The government will hold up Indigenous protected areas as a great story, and it is. It's a great numbers game when you look at over $100 million, 100 million hectares that are now recognised as Indigenous protected areas in some form. And it's a great story. What that story doesn't tell, and what the website doesn't tell, is the inequity in the level of investment that goes in to Indigenous protected areas. There's some real choices between countrymen on the ground doing work and delivering that work, between the resource work that they want to get out and do to attack weeds and ferals and biodiversity, versus running the equipment, putting fuel in the tank to be able to drive the car out there. So being able to highlight those things in terms of that inequity is a real task and one of the key cornerstones of NAILSMA strategy. Other parts of our strategy that I want to outline is that sector development. I spoke just before about ranges. It's good to see that level of investment, and the last government in their wisdom talked about doubling the ranger numbers, which is great. Again, when you see it as a political announcement and a announcement that comes out, and you commend the government for doing that. But what you're in effect doing is doubling the bottom end of the workforce in terms of rangers. So there's some real key discussions that need to be had around sector development and what it looks like in terms of succession and planning and being able to build individuals that will go and into worthwhile roles within ranger operations. Still the majority of ranger coordinators or people managing land and sea operations are non-Indigenous. So how do we get more local countrymen into those roles and having the capability and the capacities there, but it's being able to have that support and mechanisms to grow them within those roles. Another key part of NAILSMA's strategy is direct investment, and that direct investment is about putting money into Indigenous organisations. We see NGOs, big E NGOs that come with a whole level of commitment and goodwill. I'm not saying that there isn't in regards to their approach, but quite often those priorities that sit between Indigenous communities and the E NGOs are different. And that speaks again within our strategy of being able to bring forward that voice, or that Indigenous voice around land and sea management, so that people from within those local areas and local regions are expelling and saying what their priorities are, and that's being listened to. And we see that at the moment in terms of a whole lot of different works that go on. And I don't begrudge community groups. We all, at some level, are involved in local community, and we take whatever resources are available, and you know that within your own mind that if the money's there, you'll take it. And sometimes it's at the sort of compromise of your priorities or your aspirations. So there's things like that at NAILSMA really advocates for and pushes for is to get that direct investment into Indigenous communities and to hear and know what those priorities are at that local level. Because quite often those priorities are the same as what those NGOs or others who are coming and wanting to invest are the same, like being able to protect species and key habitats. So it's about having those sort of hard conversations, but first and foremost listening to mobs on the ground when they say what their priorities are, and being able to cater for that. Another part of NAILSMA's strategy is to work with young people in country, and we're producing and promoting, and we will soon go out to advertising for getting young Indigenous people coming forward to our youth group, young people in country, and promoting them and what they're saying and their priorities, and being able to, as a voice of the future, outline those things that people are, young people are saying and what they want to see in terms of the future ahead of them. So that's a key strategy for us. And also talking to the policy and advocacy space is for NAILSMA to have those strong policy positions on a whole range of things. And again, I want to talk to the government and their processes, and it's all encouraging. But like I said, the government likes to put up, and that's one of the best products that's gone internationally now is that product in terms of Indigenous protected areas. Canada have picked up the idea and they're running with, and their significant investment putting into that area. Sort of, it can be a bit embarrassing for the Australian government if they look at the level of investment that's going on overseas. But that idea started here. So how do we protect and promote those concepts, but also then have a look at what that means in terms of addressing the global biodiversity framework? It looks, like I said, it looks good on paper. And Australia, moving towards meeting our targeted goals that the government agreed to, around 30%. But we can't do it with smokes and mirrors. We've got to really think about where that investment goes and what that investment looks like. And then being able to then put that significant investment into real outcomes on country, so that there's not that choice then where countrymen are sitting out and making a choice between putting money into the fuel or going out and do that resource work. We need to see it adequately a resource to be able to just get out and do the work and get on country and do it. Lastly, I just want to talk to our role around two key areas around biodiversity. NAILSMA is actively engaged in the nature repair method development, and we've been working with that space for a couple of years, and I'm happy to say that our partnership through the Indigenous Conservation Biodiversity Alliance with the Kimberley Land Council, Aboriginal Carbon Foundation, and Indigenous Desert Alliance, which covers significant tracts of Australia, is now at the stage where we're testing those methods on the ground, and those methods will look at some sort of outcome around restorative processes or management of country under nature repair, and hopefully then the outcome then is to provide an alternative method of wealth generation and new economies to come out of that process. So we're excited, really excited about that, and we're going to have 8 trial sites by the end of this process. And again, those methods will then be considered under the nature repair legislation. But if not, we'll just go and push it through in regards to environmental markets. So that's a really exciting space where NAILSMA is engaged, particularly with our partners. And then lastly, the work that we're doing around our protecting country against invasive species work, working with 48 different ranger groups across Northern Australia. And it's that work that really delivers and shows as well, like the sort of insignificant amount that actually goes into into invasive species and also some of the key threatening processes that are out there. There's some really great innovation that goes on at community level and some great work and being able to recognise that. But like I said, that level of investment in that is just insufficient, and we need to be able to attract more resource into that space so that that work that can continue, but it's not the sort of spread of Vegemite approach that we can do, put dollops of Nutella in spaces and really attack these issues. So I'm really excited about that work, but also I just want to acknowledge those ranger groups who are doing that work on the ground. And lastly, around that space again is to be able to get a strong policy position from across Northern Australia with the key players, some that I just mentioned before, but also incorporating some of the other land councils and regional organisations that we can take those significant positions to government and say this is the level of commitment that needs to go into protected species, protected areas, but also invasive species and also biosecurity as well. So that's some of the work that NAILSMA is undertaking. Thanks.